Hello, and welcome to this new episode of Daughters of Narcissistic Mothers podcast. I am Matilde, I'm your host. I'm an inner transformation mentor supporting women in healing mother wounds through women's circles and through the one-on-one 10 weeks program. To know more about these offerings, check out my website, womenreclaimingtheirfullness.me. And for the topic of today, we're talking about spiritual abuse. A while ago, I've received a question from a listener regarding her mother using religious evidence to fight back against any boundary setting and any questioning by her. Here is an extract of the email which I got permission to share with you all by the sender. My family are from South Asian descent and are Muslim. Setting boundaries and contesting the beliefs of my narcissistic mother are often met with her fighting back with religious or cultural evidence for why she is right and why I should be fine with suffering. This also leads to further support from her flying monkeys, other family members, who seem to harbor the same toxic aura as she does. I am convinced that my mother exhibits traits that are characteristic of the more covert narcissist, as her methods of manipulation are often geared to paint her as a victim of the world and her terrible rebellious daughter, who she has done so much for without any return. Again, I wonder if this is common across specific cultural religious backgrounds and if there are any specific advice you can give for this. Please continue with this podcast. They are really great and have helped me in so many ways. Thank you. And thank you so much for your request and for your patience as I get around to honor them all. I really appreciate you, all the listeners, all the emails I received. So I'm always grateful for it. So today, as we said, I want to address the topic of spiritual abuse related to maternal narcissism. Let me ask you, do you feel you may have experienced spiritual abuse by your narcissistic mother, but you are not sure? Are you still experiencing it right now in your present day life? So today we're going to go through the signs to identify and recognize this kind of manipulation, and also 5 steps to help you deal with it, to help you start healing from it. The first thing to understand is that this type of manipulation is cross-cultural and not tied to one particular culture or tradition. This is really important. In the email that I just read, the person is from a Muslim background. I have come from more of a Christian background, and I have clients from a lot of different religious cultural backgrounds, and this has come up pretty much for everyone in some way, shape or form. So it's completely cross-cultural. In this episode, I'm not referring to one religion or tradition in particular. So even if I use the word God for simplicity, you can change that into whatever is your religious background. Nor the intent of this episode is to speak against any religious beliefs or traditions. Absolutely not. I honor all of them, and this is not a personal point of view either. It's actually to talk about this phenomenon of spiritual abuse that a narcissistic mother uses. So the definition of spiritual abuse is the attempt to exert power and control over someone using religion, faith, or beliefs. So this episode is all about the use of religious traditions and spiritual beliefs as a way to manipulate someone into losing their own identity and self-belief, becoming easily controllable as a result. A narcissistic mother, as well as every other narcissist, will look for evidence to support her truths and for excuses to rationalize her behavior into being right, regardless of how abusive such behaviors are. And she will look for means to control. Religion offers the perfect tool to achieve all of this. It is one thing to question your mother, and other entirely to question the authority of God or of any of their representatives. So if she can use the support of a figure of influence within the organized religion she follows, or of other family members following the same, or if she can quote teachings and scriptures for her benefit, you can bet she will. It also provides her with the perfect excuse to never take responsibilities for her actions and toxic behaviors. So as you can see, it's like the perfect mean of manipulation. We can, of course, meet this kind of abuse outside of the family environment and outside of maternal narcissism. I mean, we can find it in a partner, we can find it in a specific organized group or community, and all of that. And this can all be extremely traumatizing in itself. And I get that. But today we're going to talk specifically of how this works in the case of maternal narcissism. So you can find, if you've experienced this in other aspects of your life, you can find tons of material online as to how to deal with that specifically. Today we're talking about the specific spiritual abuse coming from a narcissistic mother, which there isn't actually much out there to listen to or to read on that I could find. So that's why I wanted to be very specific today. So in the case of a narcissistic mother using this kind of manipulation, you've likely suffered through it since early childhood, on top and above all of the other toxic ways a narcissistic mother can operate. So it's something that just starts from the very, very beginning, from early childhood, and this can creates actually a deep conditioning of beliefs that takes time to unpack. It's quite intense when it's like constant and consistent from early childhood. Now, there can be cases where this kind of starts with some religious moment that maybe your mother had afterwards, and so all of a sudden she just changed and became super religious, and then she started using this. So also in that case, it kind of goes adding up to all the regular ways she has conditioned you up until that point. That just becomes one extra thing on top of it. But mainly it is particularly intense when this is something we've been growing up with from the very, very beginning. I wasn't aware spiritual abuse had even been a thing in my life until I started unpacking a lot of trauma within my system and things came up to the surface. So it can be subtle, it can be something that you mightn't be aware is there, because maybe in some cases it's really obvious and it has been used consistently quite in quite an assertive way. And then, as the email says, sometimes when we're talking about covert, more vulnerable narcissists, they can also be quite subtle, and it can be something that is so accepted within the family or within the community that you really don't know that's even going on until you actually come across something like this episode, or until you actually start, as I did in my journey, unpacking some stuff, and that just starts coming to the surface. Memories of things you've been told and how they are now impacting your life start coming up. So how do we recognize spiritual abuse by a narcissistic mother? Here I want to go through the signs. There's 11 signs, main signs to spot it. And again, you might have experienced some of these, you might have experienced all of them. Just take whatever serves. You might have experienced a mix of a few. Each experience is unique, so make sure you feel into each one of them and then see how that actually resonates or doesn't resonate with you. So one thing, the first sign is the use of religious beliefs and traditions as evidence to back up everything she says to you. Every truth she says to you gets backed up by religious evidence. It's not her word, it's God's word. A narcissistic mother gaslights, guilt trips, speaks by truth, criticizes, makes you feel responsible for her, and so on. Those are the regular behaviors of a narcissistic mother. Now, add to all of the above that God has given her the divine right to do so, making her perfectly justified and making you the bad person. So she uses religious belief to make you feel guilty and to validate her truths. She tells you you're not disappointing just her, but you're also disappointed God. God said you are to be responsible for her in order to be a good daughter. The bad things she sees in you are not only bad in her eyes, but also in the very eyes of God. So it all gets magnified. Does that make sense? It's like you're not anymore just one human, sort of like having to survive the abuse of another human. That is already quite a big thing because she's your mother. But now this other human is also backed up by divine rights and religion and an entire community actually that shares her beliefs and backs her up. So that gets very intense. The second point is invalidating your beliefs or opinions, declaring they don't fit in with what God says, so they're not right. No other word is acceptable but the one that fits within the beliefs. Point number 3, shaming your body in all her expressions. Not only connected to your feminine physicality, which she may very well tell you it's offensive to God, but also the overall wisdom of your body, so that you start disconnecting from your body. You stop listening to the wisdom within your body, and shame is all there is when you feel into your body. And number 4, invalidating your emotions as weakness or even wickedness that God doesn't tolerate. So again, if you have any emotions that are coming to the surface, even as a small child, obviously, like it becomes very intense, because that means your emotions are not allowed. God is not allowed you to be sad or to be angry or to have an emotional reaction to anything. There's only a set of things that are allowed, and anything else outside of that is bad, which being in contact with your own emotion has a lot to do with understanding how you're feeling inside, and it's so deeply connected with your authentic self and the development of your identity. So when that's invalidated from the start, it's very intense. Number 5, gaslighting in order to prevent you from seeking help outside of her or of the family or of the community she approves of, because the only help has to come from God. Anything outside of that is not appropriate. Again, this is really, really difficult and intense and can cause a lot of loneliness and isolation when you are beginning to feel that there's something that's off, but you actually feel like you're doing something extremely bad if you go asking for help. If you try and go to therapy, that's really, really considered bad. It can be not necessarily truly religious traditions would consider that a bad thing, but it can be used to back the point of your mother. A narcissist doesn't want you to go looking for help elsewhere, because obviously that's gonna sort of uncover the fact that there's something toxic about their behaviors. It's gonna shatter the image that they're trying so carefully to maintain. So trying to prevent you from seeking help, it's a big part of the whole thing. I remember when I was a young teenager and I was sexually abused, and my mother discovered that. Her way to sort the situation was to give me, the abuser, and she got it for herself as well for good measure, a cross that we could all carry around our necks, as a symbol of I still don't know what. All I can say is that it didn't make things any better for me, but it was like a thing of, God has witnessed this, so we consider it done and healed, and it's gonna be our secret, and together with God we're just gonna keep it all within this small bunch of people, so that this is not gonna go outside of this. I mean, it's self-explanatory that that is not exactly the way to sort a situation like that. It didn't sort it. It actually went on for years after that. So it's really important to recognize when this happens. This was very subtle. I had no idea that this was even a thing, that was even spiritual abuse, but it was used in a religious symbol, which it was part of my beliefs. I believed that was something that was sacred for me, to put a blanket over something that was extremely toxic and abusive. Moving on, point number 6. So, threatening your attachments with conditions related to religious beliefs. If you if you don't behave by the rules, you're out of the family or even out of the community, okay? So your attachments are in question all the time. You're not here because we love you. You are here because we let you be here only if you go by the rules. If you don't, you're out. Point number 7, hiding behind being extremely devoted and active in the spiritual community to maintain her outer image of perfection. So angel in public, devil at home, so to speak. And this makes it difficult for you to argue or to speak about her behavior with anyone, because everyone within the community thinks she's such a devoted, amazing person. That is the image that she's putting out all the time. And so that can feel very difficult and isolating. Number 8, quoting teachings and scriptures to her own advantage. No questioning allowed, because you can't question. Questioning her is to question God. Who are you to dare question God? So you can't question her, and so anything she says, it's backed up by teachings and scriptures. Number 9, punishment. If you go against what she requires, that she can back up with religious beliefs. And again, not only punishment, the threatening of your attachments is a punishment in itself, but there can be also a lot of other ways to punish someone, all emotionally and also physically. So all the way to physical abuse, and it's justified by the fact that you've went against some religious beliefs. Number 10, the use of flying monkeys in the form of family members, friends, all the way to figures of high spiritual influence within your community to keep you under control and manipulate you into doing what she wants. I have a memory of this. It's another one of those things that just came back to me years later, sort of going, wow, this was not related to my mother now. It's when my family, the family of my ex-boyfriend, we were living together, myself and my ex-boyfriend, during college. We were living together in the same apartment, and at some point we received a phone call from his priest, actually, from his own village. He was living in a different, he would have been from a different village that I was from, and the priest rang to tell him that it was really bad, that we were sharing an apartment that we shouldn't be, and that we were living in sin, and that God wasn't approving, and so that he should move out of the apartment immediately. Otherwise he would not be welcome in his community again. So that was all coming from the family, feeling like that was not good. And they tried obviously first to speak directly to him. It didn't work, so they went to the priest to get him to speak to him, and again, that didn't work. Of course, he didn't move out, but that was just an example. And that can be very, very difficult. It was challenging for him at the time. This person was someone that he held in high regard, that had guided him for years of his life. So again, it's very intense when we're playing with such deep and precious beliefs, because your spiritual beliefs are precious too. And so it's Number 11, and the last of the signs: dragging your name through the dirt. Refuse to speak to you or even acknowledge you if you follow your own beliefs, and speak badly about you with everyone in the community, turning the community against you. So these are the 11 main signs for you to recognize if you have been through spiritual abuse growing up with your narcissistic mother, and also to recognize how much of it is still going on in your present day life. Do you recognize any of these behaviors? You can share with me and let me know, either commenting or by email at mathilde@womenreclaimingtheirfullness.me. And you can ask any questions you have on the topic too by emailing me. So what are the consequences of spiritual abuse? A chronic feeling of guilt, fear of being in the wrong in any decisions you're trying to make, constant need of approval and validation by a figure of influence or by your narcissistic mother, isolation from your family and community, lack of trust in your own guidance system, anxiety, body dysmorphia and body shame, sexual shame, a distorted understanding of what is abusive and what is not, leading to toxic and abusive relationships, and loneliness. So these are the main consequences among an ocean of a lot more. So if you're feeling any of this, I get it. I want you to know that I really get it, and I want you to know that there's nothing wrong with you for feeling it, and that none of it is your fault at all. How can we overcome all of this? Because that, first of all, we need to say that it's a journey, okay? Overcoming mother wounds in general and growing up with a narcissistic mother, aside from spiritual abuse, it's a journey and it takes time, a lot of gentleness, a lot of self-love, a lot of acceptance. It's a journey, okay? But now we're adding the whole spiritual abuse to the picture, so it's really important to be very kind with yourself and remember that it is a journey, that it takes time. There's steps to it that can be bypassed, and that you're not alone. That's, again, I'm gonna say that forever, because one of the things that come after this is this sense of loneliness, this sense of I'm the only one that has been through this. No one in the community is helping me. I've actually been kicked out of my community just for speaking up, and now I'm completely and utterly alone. But you're not alone. This happens to so many of us. It has happened to so many of us. It happens all the time. You're definitely not alone, and there's plenty of places where you can get support for this. So that's really important to remember. With that said, I'm going to share with you 5 steps today to support you in this journey. The first step is gaining awareness about spiritual abuse, which you're already doing right now by listening to this. It's important for you to understand that it is a thing, okay? It's not just in your head. You're not the mad one or the bad daughter or the bad black sheep in the family that all of a sudden is seeing things. It is actually a thing. And as I said, you're not alone in this, and it happens all the time. So it is something that does happen, and if you feel like it has happened to you, probably it has. Actually, for sure it has. If you feel that that's what you've been through, it means you have been through it. So having that awareness, understanding that that's a thing is really important. We can't actually heal or deal with anything that we don't know even exists or that we don't accept it exists. The second step is seeking support. That's really important. In a safe space where others have been through similar abuse by their narcissistic mothers, where you can safely express, because after having been in a community where nothing was safe, where you couldn't do anything that was outside of that specific box that they wanted you to be in, and then possibly even after being kicked out of such a community because maybe you started saying, hold on a second, I don't feel like I agree with this anymore. You really need to start feeling safe in a different community. A community that doesn't judge you, that doesn't tell you what to think, that doesn't tell you what to say, that doesn't tell you what's approved and what's not approved of. A community that is really loving, nourishing, and incredibly accepting of all of you without judgment. So it's really important not to fall from one abusive, toxic place to another, but make sure that it's a safe space, a space where you really can feel welcome and give the nervous system that capacity to start experiencing safety once again. Again, it's a step-by-step process. At the beginning, it can actually feel extremely threatening to go into another community. So maybe some one-on-one can be support, one-on-one therapy, one-on-one support, just to help your system beginning to trust that it's okay to be with someone else and to feel less alone. The third point is gently reconnect with your body, understanding the trauma you have been through, and open up pathways in your nervous system to regulate and bring back a state of ease, like the opening the pathway of trusting a community again, or of trusting another person to share with again. That's an opening of a pathway. So when we get traumatized, these motorways in our system get shut. And the coping strategy and the trauma response motorway are the ones that are functioning all the time. And they function regardless of the situation. So you could be in a perfectly safe space and still feel incredibly unsafe, because that's the pathway that is working. That's the motorway that is working. So when you start connecting with your body and do somatic work, do embodiment work, going into the body, that allows, in a very, very, very gentle way, without a lot of talking and without a lot of digging and without a lot of messing, it actually allows you to go in and gently switch in pathways and beginning to open without having to dramatically fix anything or close any other motorway. It just naturally starts opening the ones that are the motorway of ease, of regulation, or of feeling safe, and so on. So that's a very, very important part of the work. Step number 4, separate the beliefs that were imposed to you from the beginning, from your childhood, the beliefs that are not yours, and start separating them from what actually sounds and feels more like yours. This is a process, again, that requires self-love and that has its own timing, and it can't be forced or bypassed. But it's a really, really important one, because the result of this process is you reconnecting with your authentic self more and more. And I do have episodes on limiting beliefs on this podcast. I can't remember right now exactly what number of episode. Apologies for this. I should have looked it up beforehand. But I do that. There is the wording limiting beliefs in the title. I'll put it in the description of this episode so that you can find them, to help you working with this gentle process of separating what are actually your beliefs and what are the ones that are not yours and that came from your narcissistic mother and her spiritual abuse. Now, step number 5. At some point in this entire process that I've just described, start setting clear boundaries with your mother and other members of your family who may be involved in this abusive behavior. I have consciously placed this as the last step, not because you have to start doing it as the last thing, but because the point at which one feels capable of setting boundaries varies from situations to situation. Often, when we want to set boundaries, some degree of safety is needed first. A little bit. It's like, yeah, let's leave it at that, because that gets into a whole big other topic. But just take this for now. Some degree of safety might be needed first. So this varies. At one point, some people might just learn about spiritual abuse, actually begin to gain awareness of it and feel, hell, from this point on, I'm setting serious boundaries, and find that capacity within you from that point. For others, they first may need to find a community that supports them before they completely feel safe and find that confidence to step out of the previous community that was toxic. and the narcissistic mother that was part of that community or the family. So for some people, the somatic embodiment work is actually what brings them to the point where they discover that power, that capacity to actually, yes, I can set boundaries. There is that courage in me. It's in there. I can feel it in my body, that growl that comes up, and I can now set boundaries. So it's very, very, very personal, and it very much depends on the situations. And it also varies according to the extent of the abuse. As you know, there isn't a scale of more abusive, less abusive. I mean, emotional abuse is emotional abuse, no matter how you've been through it. There isn't, oh, I've been through more abuse than you have, and all of that. But there are times objectively when absolute distance from the narcissistic mother and her enablers is required for the physical and emotional safety of the person. So in those cases, real clear big boundaries need to be set at the very, very start, because there is actually safety in question. Other times, assertive boundaries can be a continuation of the relationship, and so there's a little bit more leeways as to when one actually starts, and maybe you can start with some boundaries and then crank it up the more you do the work. So again, this is very, very situation specific, but boundaries in this process are important. And again, if you feel like it's too hard for you by yourself to set boundaries, seeking support is key, so that you can start setting boundaries in a way that's actually safe. Mainly for you, it's to keep you safe at all times. Because there are situations where I know I've had that with clients. Thankfully, I didn't experience that in my own life specifically, although I suppose I have in parts with the sexual abuse. My safety was definitely not there. So there are situations where it's really important to have the support in order to actually be safe. So again, if you have any questions on any of this and on any of this process, let me know. You can send me an email at matilde@womenreclaimingtheirfullness.me. And this is the work that we do. This is the work that we do at Women Reclaiming Their Fullness. We support through the one-on-one program. For those of you who feel more the one-on-one is what you're looking for, and we also support with the women's circles, which is a community that is safe, above all is safe. That's how it's set up to be, for you to actually step into and start sharing and start feeling held and witnessed by other women who have been through a lot of the same. So if you're interested in any of this, if you want to know more, you can check the links in the description of the episode. Now, bottom line is, none of what you've been through is your fault. Really, really want you to hear that, because guilt is one of the main thing that does come up with this. None of what you've been through is your fault. You are not a bad person. No matter what you've been told up until now, you are not a bad person. You're an amazing human with a beautiful and precious heart who deserves to be happy and loved. That is actually your divine right. Everything else is irrelevant. If you want to have one belief, is you have the divine right to be happy and loved exactly as you are right in this moment. And also, it's important to note that there are aspects of religion and spirituality that can be truly beautiful and nourishing. Those aspects do not involve judgment, shaming, guilting, withholding of love, punishment, or isolation. None of that. If there's any of that, well, then that's not nourishing and loving. Then there's some control and manipulation going on there. And there's nothing divine about that. Spirituality and religion that are beautiful and nourishing involve understanding, safety, unconditional love, and a welcoming community. I'm going to say that again. Understanding, safety, unconditional love, and a welcoming community. That is what feels nourishing and loving, and very, very spiritual. Anything beyond that, it's a big no. So I really hope this was helpful and that gave you as much of an overview as to what spiritual abuse is about. Again, if you have any specific experience you want to share with me or any specific questions on this, feel free to email me at mathilde@womenreclaimingtheirfullness.me. And with that, I'm gonna wish you a beautiful week, lots of love, and bye for now.